Hey looters, Flutes here. Today I want to talk about one-shots and how to not botch them. A lot of people play one-shots, but there's a lot of principles I've learned over the years that can help you to have successful ones. Let's get into it. So a one-shot, what is it? Sometimes it's a 2 or 3 shot, but usually a one-shot is just a self-contained adventure that is resolved in a single night of play. So campaigns are usually drawn out over many months and have a great story arc, but one-shots are usually just like more to the point of like do one thing, succeed or fail, have some fun, make a new character for it. It's often what people do when they can't commit to getting together weekly for a campaign, or someone had to cancel in the campaign, so we still want to play, but let's just do a one-shot instead of the campaign so they don't miss out. And so one-shots are pretty common. Here are some tips to be successful with your one-shots. First, I want to talk about time management. When you set a time for your one-shot, make sure it resolves within that one night of playing and you finish on time. Oftentimes one-shots are out of necessity trying to get a lot of game time in a short session. And so usually they're about 3 hours long, and that can seem daunting to fit in like a prologue, a rising action, and a resolution, but it can be done. Just be respectful of your players' time and what they've committed to. You should not be too afraid to cut things out. I recommend over-preparing, but taking note of what's just like a nice detail or something fun, but not crucial to wrapping up your one-shot. Those are the things you want to cut if certain things go long or players were late, those sorts of things. And so you know what to cut. One-shots need to skip shopping. Have your players shop ahead of time. This is an important time management thing. If you're going to give them magic items, have them talk to you ahead of time before your 3-hour one-shot or whatever it's going to be, so that that's all resolved and you can just get right to the action. You want to start in the middle of the action, which is something I talked about in my improv principles video. Don't start your one-shot in a town where you're shopping around or just some needless exposition dump. You can give them the exposition ahead of time and say, here's what this person, NPC, tells you, and we're going to start off in the middle of what's happening. It'll be a lot more fun, and it'll make sure that you are ending on time, like I mentioned. A lot of one-shots try to do mysteries as a genre, like you're investigating a murder or something. These don't always translate well for D&D. Mysteries can really run around in circles and have players missing details that you think they should be picking up on. You don't want to make it obvious, or they solve it too fast. Mysteries are just not great. Unless you're very experienced, I recommend you just do something straightforward for your one-shots, and you'll be more successful until you know how you could do a mystery. Character backstory is less important in a one-shot, but I recommend you try to incorporate at least a little bit. Just make it minimal, because a one-shot needs to be pretty straightforward. You don't have time to do all the character development, probably, that is needed to incorporate backstories. Or just pick one character whose backstory is going to be really important, and the rest maybe tie in some unexpected way that they didn't know. Like, oh, our characters have interacted in a way that we didn't realize before. Or that person you killed was this other character's father, that sort of stuff. That can incorporate some role-playing that could bog things down, admittedly. But yeah, just don't try to over-bulk your one-shot with backstory things if you have some straightforward goal that isn't related to the backstories. Just get right to the point. Another point of contact is railroading. If things are going a little bit askew, it's okay to say to the players, hey guys, I have something pretty specific prepared and we're kind of getting off the rails and I don't want to waste your time or like not end on time, so I'd like it if we would just go in this direction instead. Hopefully your players are all the understanding types who are going to work with you and not just be like, no, I want to do what I want. And they'll say, okay, if we want to have the most fun, we should probably get back on track for what the DM has prepared. Because it's a one-shot. There's something very specific planned, and after tonight, it's hopefully done. Because you don't want to make a one-shot go multiple nights. And if you do that too many times, you just have a bunch of unfinished one-shots. It's happened to me. My friends and I used to do a format where we basically did only one-shots. And so if someone didn't finish, that meant you had to get that same group back together to finish it at some point. And it just wasn't fun if you didn't finish it in one night. and so make sure you're finishing them. One-shots typically have a boss fight, some big fight to look forward to. In fact, a lot of one-shots have no combat until that boss fight happens. So you want to foreshadow what they can expect so that they get hyped and amped for whatever boss fight they're going to have. You want to give the boss minions as well. If you just make it a single boss with no minions, it might not be as fun. Utilize minions. Have some fun with it. Boss fights should probably have legendary actions as well, especially in a one-shot. Even if they're not very legendary, like even a legendary goblin warlord could have some like lair actions or legendary actions. Not because they're legendary, but because they're like in their element and they're something to be feared. They don't have to be major, like a dragon like buffeting people with its wings or anything. It's just something simple like an extra attack or the ability to move and disengage or the ability to do a smoke bomb, you know, stuff like that. Just to give them an edge against the players if the action economy is off. Make a fun environment for the players to fight this boss in. You know, make it so there's pillars to hide behind, or there's mud, or there's thorn bushes, lava, waterfalls, skeletons, geysers. All kinds of things can make a combat more interesting, and it'll really show that your players that you're being creative and putting a lot of thought into things. Indulge the players with loot. Even though it's a one-shot, players always like to get some cool item drops or opportunities to get cool things, boons, whatever. And so even though it's a one-shot, a lot of people like to use their characters more than once, even from a one-shot. So don't skimp out on the rewards for a one-shot. Allow them to get some cool stuff. Another thing with one-shots, especially because one-shots are sometimes the tool of new DMs to get more experience before they try a campaign, a tip I have is to not act like you are smarter than your players or like you're trying to defeat them. Act like you want them to succeed and make them look good with the things they try. If you are being negative or combative, it actually shows that you are not very confident as a DM. And so one way is just to have fun and be collaborative with them. If your players make characters that are good at something, don't like go the opposite way. So if there's like a barbarian who's like the bear totem that has resistance to all damage except psychic damage when they're raging, don't make all the enemies use psychic damage. They made a one-shot character that is based on resisting most types of damage. Instead, wail on them with other types of damage that they resist. They will feel like, man, my character was so cool how I resisted so much damage. If you just plan around their weaknesses, it's like, they made a character for a one-shot in order to feel cool and to experience a certain class's abilities that maybe they don't usually get to. And if you make it so they don't matter in your one-shot, you blew it. I'll be blunt there. You want to prepare to make their abilities look good. Cody from Taking 20 wrote about this, of like unbalancing your encounters. I loved that video. He talked about this exact concept of how we should plan on making players look good with their abilities instead of like planning around them like some mastermind who's trying to exploit their weaknesses. I highly recommend that video, or I pretty much just summed it up too, so you could just stick with this. One-shots also go down smooth when you tie up loose ends. If there's some villain that escapes, plan another one-shot for another time where the players can pursue that villain, whether they know it or not. I mentioned that we used to do one-shots a lot with my friends. We often tried to chain them together so there was some sort of continuous story, even though they were just one-shots. And so we'd often like meet to play a game and it'd be like, oh, this is a continuation of that one that we did like 3 weeks ago where we invaded the Thieves Guild. But this time we're doing something else, and you didn't know ahead of time that it was going to be a continuation of that, and that can be exciting. And it allows for level progression as well. If you're a DM who finishes a one-shot and the players ask about something that like they didn't resolve, or they're like, what would have happened? It's better to just tell them because mysteries, like, they might not even believe that you know the answer. No matter how much you prepare, it's only fun if the players get to interact with it. I've had a lot of people I play with not interact with certain things or figure out certain things in a one-shot, and afterwards they ask me a question about it and I say, I guess you won't know, or it's a mystery. And they always seem so like, okay, well, I guess we'll never know. Like, why'd you prepare it if you didn't want to share it? And so it's okay to share those things after an adventure and just have some fun while you're all talking about the adventure, because you know, you made the preparation. Unless you want to use that idea another time, then say, oh, I'll just use that again another time, and you'll see. Just make it sure that they don't think that you're just like holding things close to your chest or that you don't actually know the answer. Be willing to tie up those loose ends and be liberal with your information sharing. The last tip I have is probably one of the coolest ones that I learned recently, which is relating a one-shot to your main campaign. If you're playing in a campaign and you've taken a break to do a one-shot, it's great to surprise the players and have it actually be part of the campaign setting, whether it be like something that happened far in the past in your setting, or maybe something that some of the NPCs did once that you heard about, and all of a sudden they're playing in it, and they might not even notice it until the end where you kind of reveal what they're playing in. One of my DMs did this recently, and I've heard about other people doing that online through Reddit and everything, and I think that is an amazing idea, to not have one-shots be totally separate from any campaign you're playing, but instead make them be related and complement each other. This is a great way to wow your players and show them how cool your setting is and how much you've thought it through and how much there is to explore if they really get into it. Relate your one-shots to your campaign. You will not regret it. So those are my tips for running one-shots. Anything you disagreed, anything that you agreed wholeheartedly on, cast a message in the comments below. And feel free to visit flutesloot.com, where we have an article dedicated to this topic, as well as many other articles. We're trying to do weekly articles and videos, so make sure that you subscribe so that our telepathic bond can let you know when we have a new video out, because we love talking D&D. Until the next video, I'm Flutes, and this has been Flutes Loot. Happy adventuring, and I'll see you later.